Hello, everybody. I'm Joe McGovern, awards reporter here at TheWrap. We are so happy to have you here for our 2021 Awards International Screening Series. And today we are excited to bring you Funny Boy. We are going to show you the trailer for the movie first, and then we'll go right into a conversation with the director, Deepa Mehta. To our audience, please participate in the live chat of the stream and share your thoughts about the film, and do let us know where you're tuning in from. And now, before we introduce our guest, here is the trailer for Funny Boy.
பாட்டு பாடவா பாட்டு பேசவா பாடும் சொல்லவா பறந்து செல்லவா ஒரு நாளும் என் ஹஸ்பண்டுக்கு இது சொல்ல எனக்கு முடியாது. நான் தமிழ் அட்மையர் பண்ணுறேன்.
A joyful secret. What's wrong with you? You're a pansy, a sissy, a fag.
அவர்கள் தான் நம் மண்ணுக்காக போராடுகிறார்கள்.
Toddemala belly, a minority with a majority complex.
We don't want you here anymore.
இந்த ஆக்களோட எனக்கு வரத்து போச்சு, just like your landlady.
බෝඩර්ස්ලා කියනවා මෙයාව යවන්න කියලා. මම වගේ අසරණ ගැහණිය මොනවා කරන්නද?
Paradimala, Kotia, Trastania.
You end up killing people, innocent people.
Isn't that what you call collateral damage?
Collateral damage பத்தி பேசுறது எங்களுக்கு ஈஸி இல்லை. உங்களோட பணம் உங்களை காப்பாத்துது.
I love you, RJ. I just can't. Hey, my family.
Women and children all butchered, simply because we are devil.
It was terrible, Emma. What happened to you, Nalini?
ஒன்றுமில்லை.
And you are different. Different is wonderful.
It's my pleasure to introduce director Deepa Mehta.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you? Where are you calling in from today?
Toronto.
Ah, great.
Toronto, Canada.
Yes, you're home for
Yeah.
you're home for many years, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was born and brought up in Delhi, and I was born in Amritsar, actually, in India, and went to school there, university there. Got married to a Canadian and came to Canada, and being really young, felt that okay, let me try it out, and then I'll go home. And before you know it, you're divorced. Before you know it, you have joint custody, and you can't go home. So home has always been India and Canada and India.
I want to just, I guess, for those, I'm sure most people who are watching this know who you are, know about your career. I just wanted to mention just quickly your a short career biography that you are probably best known here in the U.S. for your Elements trilogy. Over about a 10-year span, you directed first Fire, then Earth, and Water. And Water in 2005 became the first Canadian film nominated for an Oscar that wasn't in French. It was in Hindi. You followed that up with Salman Rushdie adaptation of Midnight's Children, several other worthwhile films, and even documentaries. Curious about how this project, though, entered your life, because the book, it's a beloved book that was published in the 90s, was it?
About 22 years ago, so I guess in the 90s.
Yeah. Was it a book that you were sort of instantly aware of when it came out, and were you circling it? You know the author, don't you?
Yes, Sham. I knew from earlier on. In fact, he wrote um, a short film uh, based on a Tamil family and a Tamil woman who came to Canada and were refugees. And at that point, this was like years ago, and the director couldn't find any any Tamil or Indian actors, so they asked me if I would act in it, and I said, "Are you crazy? I can't act." And but I did it, and I think they regretted it, but at least I did it. I got to know Shah, uh, and uh, and when he wrote Funny Boy, it came out, and I loved it, and I instantly rang him up and said, "Could I option it?" And it had already been optioned by another, a really famous director in England, I think, and then I just forgot about it, and I visited it again about 5 years ago. We did a radio play based on it, and then we moved on, and then about 2.5 years ago, uh, I got a copy of the script of Funny Boy from Sham, the author himself. So I think he got really tired of the film never getting made, being optioned but not getting made.
Yeah.
And I think he's half Tamil and half Sinhalese. His mother is Sinhalese, his father is Tamil, and he grew up in Sri Lanka, in Colombo.
And also spend some time in Canada too, right?
Well, he's a Canadian.
Yeah.
He wrote a book in Canada,
Yes.
and he came out, in fact, in Canada. But
Yeah.
well, it's semi-autobiographic. But I thought it was very interesting that he wanted to make it so badly that he actually sat down, and he'd never written a script before, and he wrote a script, and it was. I think that's what really touched me, and I think perhaps Joe, because it reflected a world politically that, in fact, was very familiar to me
Mm.
3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. What was happening all over the world with the rise of populist, nationalist governments. That it really resonated with me. That what was happening was that we have such little tolerance for somebody who's not like us. So I was really moved by it, but it was 142 pages long. So I thought that I asked him, I said, how do you feel about if you write it together? And he
Yeah.
said, no, he doesn't know a word of Tamil, by the way. So it was very interesting because he got involved and we both wrote it together, co-wrote it together with using his script as a blueprint. Uh, because of him, I got involved with, he opened a world that of Tamil actors and Sinhalese actors and playwrights and locations that even though I'd done Water, for example, in Sri Lanka and Midnight's Children, that I didn't know. So it was a collaboration that I was very, very proud of. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does tackle some pretty heavy themes. It begins in 83.
I think maybe 73, probably.
Yeah.
It ends in 1984, I think. Yeah.
Right. So we can kind of see the evolution in a way of the Sri Lankan Civil War, which cost many tens of thousands of lives. However, it is something of a backdrop. I mean, it's the film deals with it. We know certainly what's going on, and yet you do tell the story also of the coming of age of this young boy, RG, who is such a great character, and I guess is somewhat of an autobiographical portrait. Curious though to ask you, because this is something you've done in your other films too, the idea of sort of touching on the details of horror, of war, and cruelty, but doing it with brevity, so that it doesn't the horror, it doesn't overwhelm all of our senses, and yet we don't. It's unforgettable the ways that you bring us in to the terrible things that are going on there. How does that, like, what is your philosophy about that?
Oh my God, my philosophy about that. I mean, I guess I mean, I think of myself as a realist, and I think that I. But also, there, if you're a realist, you can't just ignore and what's happening in the world right now. I mean, it's specifically right now whether for me doing Funny Boy, it's not just about the war, and it's just not about a queer coming of age film. It's about intolerance and what happens to this little boy who's gay. I mean, and the absolute intolerance that people have around him, accepting that. And when you make that into the larger picture, the picture becomes also the lack of tolerance about the Tamils in this particular film.
Yeah.
It's not what attracts me as much as it's, I guess, I'm really curious about what drives people to this level of intolerance. And I've learned, I mean, that's why I do the kind of films I do, or choose to do them, is because I really want to learn something more about it. So perhaps it's just plain curiosity about us as human beings.
Well, and also like with some of the other films, especially with Water,
Mhm.
we we see the world through the eyes of a child, and in this case, especially for the first 40 minutes, in which he's a little boy. Um, that seems to be something that also that you're attracted to as a storytelling tool. Would that be right to say?
Absolutely, and it happened in a film called Earth as well, which I
Yeah,
did,
right.
which is also about the sectarian war that happened with the division of India into India and Pakistan, and when the Brits left, and as usual, left everything in a chaos. And uh, the the sectarian war is also seen through the eyes of Lenny, who's a little girl, a 9-year-old girl, and I think it's the eyes of innocence. So there's no judgment with children in that sense. I mean, if it is, it's very facile, and that kind of it's not purity, but that kind of sense of adventure, that sense of non-judgmental, but yet being precocious and yet not being, is so wonderful. As we grow, I think we lose it. So I find it a wonderful tool and always a surprising one, which is fascinating as a filmmaker. That you don't know what the young actors, are going to bring to it, because they might just respond in a way that you don't expect as a director, and that's the magical quality of using children, I think.
Yeah. I want to I want to talk for a little while about you as a filmmaker and as a stylist. There's some lovely touches, like when we see the more adult version of RG playing tennis, and we see the sort of perspective through his father's eyes, and suddenly you've edited in the little boy again, so we're reminded of that. But the moment where the film transitions and jumps forward, I guess about 15 years or 10 years or so, it's beautifully done. We see the wave coming in
Mm-hmm.
of the ocean, and then we see RG emerge from the water as a more of an adult young man.
Year old, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I would love to just talk about your use of the camera. It seems like it's always moving. It's always sort of roving. In the very beginning of the film, we kind of get taken through the house in one long take, and there's such warmth in the light, and so such brightness. Uh, could you maybe talk about that, about your visual approach? Especially in this case.
uh, I think that for this, I mean, Dakko is who's the cinematographer, is amazing, and
Yeah.
but I knew that what I wanted to capture, and it starts a bit earlier for me, Joe, because when I finished writing the script, I sort of put it away and get back to it about 2 or 3 weeks later, and then put on my director's hat. I'm sure everybody does that. It's nothing new, but I I like to think of every script in in a color palette. So
Hmm.
for me, I mean, water obviously was, since you've seen it, is there was a lot of blue in it, and there was the pink of the lotus, and it was always flowing, uh, and this was definitely the ochre of the sunsets of Sri Lanka.
Hmm.
Uh, the sun not rising but setting. It's
Yes.
a beautiful country, and the ochre of the sand, the turquoise blue of the water, the green of the palm leaves and palm trees, and the red of blood. So, once I had the color palette, then when I talk to my cinematographer, that's how I decide and we decide together after that. I really wanted it to be shot in natural light as much as possible. So 90% of the film is actually shot in natural light. We actually shot during the sunset. I think there was only one place that it was lit, and I didn't want to have any tracks. I wanted the camera to be handheld and moving. So and to be motivated by the actors. So the camera never motivated the actors motivated the camera. And uh, and that happens only, I think, that we could do that because we spent about 10 days in rehearsals, not rehearsals of the script, but rehearsals of the characters.
Hmm.
And that, I think, by the time we start, not a word from the script, uh, by the time we finish rehearsals, the actors are confident within themselves and within their characters, that they can actually motivate the camera. The camera just can't be motivated by somebody who's aimless, and there has to be some grounding. And I think that's what happened, and the grounding was needed very badly, because for me, as far as the camera was concerned, because it was about trying to find it. I mean, where do you find stillness when everything around you is erupting? That
Yes.
So it's a philosophy of the camera, as opposed to, okay, now we're going to use only 25 mil lenses or 16 millimeters, or now this is a close up. It became about emotions. It became about philosophy. It became about the history of Sri Lanka.
Do you have the opportunity to do that with a lot of your films? Have a rehearsal period
With all my films,
that's important to you?
it's extremely important to me, and to have those 10 days, because I mean, the worst thing that can happen on a set is, because that's in fact the cheapest time. I mean, once you go in front of the camera, the clock really starts ticking. But
Yeah.
this is me and the actors, and I use the and I use there's a wonderful book, if you get a chance to read it, or anybody's listening to this, called the Natya Shastras, which is literally a book on dramaturgy written in India for 2000 years, about the art of drama. And in that, it says that there are only 9 emotions, and whether it's bravery or cowardice, or beauty or love, or and silence, and wonderment. And so we use that for the actors to really find how they feel. So even if they are feeling great love, if they stand in a box, you make a grid with each emotion, and if they stand in the grid of, let's say, hatred, and have to express love, how do they do it? So you explore every emotion, and to get to that takes a long time. And by the end of 10 days, I mean, till till today, maybe it's not great, but I'm really happy to say that in the middle of a shoot, no actors ever turned around to me and said, what's my motivation? So it's really nice. Yeah.
We need to talk about the two actors who play RG at different ages. Arush Nand,
Yeah,
the
Arush.
little boy,
And,
and then Brandon Ingram.
oh,
Fascinating. We'll talk about him second, because there's so much more to say there, I think. But what about Arush? Did you find him? I mean, he's great in the film. Did you find him there in Sri Lanka?
no, I didn't. I found him in Bombay. He's done a few films, and I looked in Sri Lanka, and in fact, found a young boy who I thought would be terrific. But then I met Arush. I mean, I met lots of young kids. And I met him in Bombay, and I fell in love with him because there was, he's a natural. And the other thing is that I think that he's a thinking little boy. I mean, he is very quiet and he listens, and you don't have to interpret anything. Usually with kids, you have to say, okay, you're feeling happy. Let's say you're meeting your favorite cricket star or your favorite movie star. How would you feel? The analogies one has to draw usually with kids. With him, there wasn't any of that. He just went for it. And I think there was a deep sadness in him, which his father had just died about a year ago, and his mother was really wanted him to just be diverted from where he was, the space he was in, and she was wonderful because with kids, it's really important, Joe, that you have you don't have a star mom or a dad hanging around.
Yeah.
I mean, Rashmi is a wonderful mother, and her thing was just for her kids. And so Arush was just lovely. And the other kid that I found who was Sri Lankan and Tamil in Colombo ended up by playing his brother. So
Oh,
nice, yeah.
yeah.
The obnoxious brother, yeah.
Yes. Right. Who we see a lot of later as well.
Yeah.
So with Brandon, who is not a film actor.
No.
Well, he is now.
It's his first film.
And he's actually a theater actor, and also it works in advertising. I read.
He works in advertising, and he's a theater actor, and this was his first film. And what, I don't know if you know this, I mean, one of the things that really, really drew me to Brandon was not only his ability, I mean, he was just wonderful, but also the fact that homosexuality is still a criminal offense in Sri Lanka. So, and he is the only young. He's a burgher. That means his descendants are the Dutch and the Brits, and intermarriage between Sinhalese and Tamil, and they're the smallest minority there. And he's the only young actor I met who had come out, in fact. And I thought that was extremely brave. And it was very important to both Sham, the writer, and myself that we have an actor who was queer. I mean, it would have been wonderful to have a Tamil queer actor, but we tried and we couldn't find one.
Right. But so because that's still a bridge that doesn't really get crossed enough, where qualified gay actors get to play gay characters.
We can only try, and we did try, and then it's like, do I not make the film because I do not get what I want or what I feel is important? I mean, as a colored person, I mean, I really believe that so few films are made about Indians or Southeast Asians or Sri Lankans in this case. It's important that that there is representation. So I think it was important for me. But we tried and we couldn't find anybody.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough. It's difficult. I mean, it is a criminal offense for a Tamil to come out who from Sri Lanka or even from here. It's very difficult. At least I wasn't successful. Anyway, we tried.
He's also unless what I read was wrong, he's also older than the character he's playing.
Of course he is. I mean, and maybe I don't think you should tell everybody that, Joe.
Okay. I guess I want to just point to that as another quality of how good his performance is, that he's playing someone considerably younger, and yet it's so organic to the film. We completely buy him as a school boy, basically, turning into an adult.
He's supposed to be 18, and I bought it. I mean, I auditioned him and I put him in camera, etc. Because, and I thought I believed it.
Yeah,
and that was the last thing that I thought. But because he is just so beautiful. What is beauty except innocence? And Brandon had it in spades.
Now, during that those 10 days of I guess it's not quite exact to call it rehearsal because you're not really doing the script, but
It's
just
like a
getting together
workshop. It's like
workshop.
a workshop, yeah.
Did you encourage Arush and Brandon to communicate in order to maybe, I don't know, sense each other's essence since they're playing the same character?
Absolutely. I think that before you do a workshop, and this workshop was led by uh, a very dear friend of mine who's a eminent theater director in India, and she's done all my workshops. Her name is Neelam, and before we sit down and we start the workshop, we plan what we want from it. And one of the things was that can we get the family together, and can we get Arush and Brandon? How do we slowly uh, let them approach each other naturally, as
Right.
opposed to, okay, now both of you, you're your younger self, you're the old self. So it, in fact, happened organically. And by the 10th day, they were an extension of each other. And I think that the observation of sometimes Brandon not just sitting outside the box, the workshop box, and observing uh, Arush was very helpful, because I think that he got informed of where he came from, the character came from. And little Arush, sometimes he'd watch Brandon and he'd say, "Did I really do that?" Meaning, did my older self do that? So
Mm.
that's the importance of the workshop, that you can actually experiment with and make it organic. We hope, and I think they did a really good job.
Yeah. And surely they were going to be there together as like in scenes where I just mentioned where they both kind of appear in the same scene. So
We weren't together, in fact. They were not together. It was shot in different times. Yeah.
oh, did you?
Yeah.
um, what was the shoot like? How long did you do it? Did you get to be as close to being on location as possible?
Yes, we were. The film was all shot in Colombo and just on the outskirts, because it took us a year to get permission. I don't know if you're aware, but to make a film in India and Sri Lanka, or many places now, even Pakistan, you have to get permission from the government uh, to before you film in Sri Lanka or even in India, and you have to give the script, and the script has to be approved by the ministry and etc. And even though this Funny Boy is a beloved book of Sri Lanka, written by a Tamil Sinhalese and translated and even taught in Colombo University, which it took us 1 year to get permission. And
Mm.
that was such a shock, because there was Sham and myself, we'd written it, and when we gave it to the government, I mean, we thought with the local producer that it was a cinch, there'd be no problem because it was so familiar. But the government really, it's another. They just decided no, they really didn't want to give it permission. But we persisted. I mean, it took me 1 year with my producer to just uh, to go there, be rejected, go back again. Sham really tried to help. I mean, we spoke to the prime minister and
Mm.
everything, but then the government changed at a certain point, and the head of this National Film Commission actually was a woman, and she read the script and she said, "I don't know what the fuss is about. Go and make it." And we hit the ground running,
Yeah.
and we made it, and we were out of there. And I think about 5 days later, there was an election, and the current populist government is back in power, and there was no way that we could make this film there now. I think it was a maybe a 28-day shoot, and,
Hmm.
and because we shot it in mostly in natural light. Doug did that. There were periods where we couldn't shoot because the sun was too bright or whatever.
And really, I mean, it does stand as one of the few major films about this period in Sri Lankan history.
I I haven't seen a film that actually that has gotten. I'm sure. I mean, there are a couple of films that come to mind that have been done in Sri Lanka, but it's difficult because of the censorship, and also to this day, it's not easy being a Tamil in a country that is majority Sinhalese. Though what's happening, which is amazing, is the Tamil activists are really extremely vocal, and so are the Sinhalese. I mean, there are so many amazing, bright, young Tamil and Sinhalese people in Sri Lanka who I would call are real activists, and though there are very few films that have been seen outside, I think, or I think very few Sri Lankan people have talked to you, I think, Joe. And so for me and for Sham, the most important thing was the reality that at least people would see what the kind of genocide that happened and
Yeah.
why it's so important to build bridges. And for,
Yeah.
that's the reason. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't think that, you're going to get really whatever's going to happen to this film. The most important thing is people see that this when when there isn't any tolerance, we really are the humanity that's in danger.
For sure. And as you said, this is not even a story that's so unique simply to this one country at this one time. I mean, this is something that this is a world issue.
It is a world issue, and absolutely, it's I mean, I think that many people now know what happened in Sri Lanka that didn't know,
Yeah.
and that for Sham, the writer, and for myself and the actors, and all the crew. I mean, this is extremely important.
I want to ask a few more questions and then open it up and see what the audience wants to ask. You mentioned color earlier, and I wanted to just bring up one specific color. There is a bedroom where this sort of the two young men discover their attraction for each other.
Mm.
And the walls of that bedroom are painted the most vibrant green.
Hmm.
Tell me about that choice. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to have a scene like that unfold with the walls that color, but how deliberate that was.
Oh, extremely deliberate. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that one of the first things I do when I read a script as a director is that I say, "What's the color palette of what's the color of the film? What's the color of the story? And for me, it was I said the oak of the sunsets, the turquoise blue of the ocean, the green of the
Yes.
palm, and that for me is reflected in different shades, but especially in the vibrancy of the bedroom scene, so-called. It sounds just so cheesy, bedroom scene. But yes, it was very deliberate, and I love it. I mean, because it just what they're doing is so. Not only is it innocent and sensual, but it's also so brave
Yeah.
from where they are and what the country is saying. And I just thought, yes, it's their scene, it's their home, and this is the warmth of green, of growth, of literally of of the world, the earth that we're trying to save. I mean, I'm getting soppy. It's all your fault.
It's wonderful. I wanted to ask also about references in the movie to literature first, and then talk about music as well. But it's great. You have some Charles Dickens that we hear being read. Gore Vidal's his landmark gay book, the City and the Pillar. What else? There's even a reference to Dale Carnegie and his.
Yeah, and the music. And the musicians. Yeah, yes. I mean, this is the other thing is that one of the most important. It's in the book, by the way. So I
Hmm.
mean, Tom gets the credit for that. But again, I mean, we're talking about preconceptions of what people have of what are third world quote unquote countries. That there's nothing but slums in India, for example, or there is which is true. There are a lot of slums, but that's not all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And we aren't all slumdog millionaires wherever. And but there is that preconception, and it was really important that to show, which is there in the book, that there is education, there is knowledge about world literature, and there are, and it's really important that can wealth protect rich people. That was a very important aspect of the novel.
Can wealth protect? Yeah.
Wealth, and it turns out it can't.
Yeah.
You know, and so to show that aspect, and that means going to school, which is an any country that's been colonized for the way, my God, Sri Lanka and India was for so long. I mean, it's such a it comes with its real negativity, and but it also comes with some exposure to literature, for example, and language, which as somebody who grew up in India, I'm very grateful for.
It's actually quite cute how it plays out, or it's ironic because when RG is reading the Gore Vidal novel, mother comes over and picks it up and says, "Oh, what's this?" And she doesn't realize.
She has no clue. She knows it's sort of risque,
And there's a great scene that's scored basically to Sting, the police, every breath you take.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I that happened at about, I think, midway between the film. I thought that after the after the young boys are in bed, what would they do, you know? And I thought, yeah, they'd listen to, because they referred to every breath you take all the time, and I said, yeah, let them dance to it. And the actors were really appalled. They said, absolutely not. We're not going to do any such thing. And, and it was really funny. And but then they did, and they really got into it. And it wasn't choreographed. Nobody, we didn't have a choreographer, nothing. I mean, Doug had the camera handheld, and we just played the music, and they started improvising. So nobody choreographed it, and we did about 10 different takes, and I think it's one of the most magical scenes. And we were really lucky to get the song. I mean, because it costs a fortune, but we got it for next to nothing.
Oh, that's great. That's
I mean, our budget. I mean, are you kidding, Joe? I mean, there was no way. I mean, it would have been the budget of the whole film. But yeah.
And also one of the real heroes of Canada, Howard Shore.
Oh my God, yes.
Did the musical score, which is terrific. Was your first time working with him? Was it?
My first time working with him, and he is also absolutely amazing. He's brilliant. I've never worked with anybody like that, and we were because he got it, and we talked about emotions, not what kind of instrument are you going to use or what. And both of us agreed, and he said it, I think. He said that the film that comes to mind for him was Bicycle Thieves.
Yes.
By Vittorio De Sica. That innocence, to capture that becomes, that you build up to something which is almost horrific, but it's the loss of a bicycle. And it's the same way this is a loss of innocence. And so that's what he went with. And he got musicians from who were, this is during the pandemic, don't forget. So, I mean, there was one guy who played the Indian bansuri, which is the flute, who was in Switzerland, and somebody else in Bombay. And he got it all together, and he made the score absolutely international. It's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful to him. And I'm grateful, I would like to talk about the editing.
Yes.
What I thought it was, I mean, it's so strange, after you make a film and you're outside it. I mean, you can say, my God, it's beautifully edited. I mean, somehow I feel I had nothing to do with anything. So I can just look at it and say, I like this film. And I like this film because of the people who made it happen. And the editor was David Hamilton, who's the producer and my longtime partner. When we finished shooting, he said, Deepa, if you had a choice in the world, who would you like to edit this film? So I said, without a beat, apparently, Teresa Font. And he said, really? And you think we can get her? And I said, we can try, because I'd just seen Pain and Glory,
Hmm.
and Teresa cut it. And I thought, if there's anybody in the world who would do justice to what the material we had, it would be Teresa. So, and she lives in Madrid. So we actually edited the film with her. She really liked the script and responded to the footage. Uh, we edited it in her apartment in Madrid, and caught the last flight when the pandemic was, when before
Wow.
it closed down. I mean, it was, so all the post was done during the pandemic. It was a tough film, tough
And
post to do.
Spain was shut down too.
Oh
Why?
yeah, totally. Spain was shut down. The last few days, I mean, suddenly, I mean, Madrid, which is so alive. I mean, it was like walking out of her where she edited her place, her house, in fact, and suddenly nobody was around. It was really scary. And
Yeah.
then when we got the last flight back to Canada, it was the airport was deserted, and everybody was suddenly, it became a different world overnight. It was pretty dramatic.
What was it about the Almodovar movie about Pain and Glory that resonated with you and made you want her for this film?
Um, I think that the way she dealt with a young child, and went to be
Yeah.
with, the character that Banderas plays. It was juxtaposition, which I thought was not similar, but the emotions were similar. And I thought the way she dealt with them was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I thought, if anybody would, I wanted to cut it. So I got Howard Shaw, who I was really thrilled about, and I got Teresa Font and Doug Coe, and a crew and a wonderful cast. I mean, really, really people who learned something. There were Sinhalese actors who played Tamils, and they you could feel that they were learning something, and they wanted to learn about what their parents absolutely don't want to talk about,
Right.
but they're aware of it. And some Indians, some Pakistanis. It was like to build a Southeast Asian community, because all of us, in our own ways, whether it's India or whether it's Pakistan or whether it's Sri Lanka, we've all been through what sectarian war does.
Yeah.
And so we had that in common. I think
Yeah.
that's very important. Yeah.
I wanted to ask one more sort of personal question before we go to the audience questions. But you just mentioned, recently coming back from Madrid to the Toronto airport, and I hope this is for those who have seen the film. Or I'll be vague in how I say this, but the ending of Funny Boy is set in the Toronto airport, and it is snowing. And for the characters, it's a huge shock because they just came from the heat of Sri Lanka. But to what extent did you identify, with those characters in that moment? Because you also came, you're immigrant to Canada now, many years. Um, did that sort of stir within you a little bit as you were shooting that or conceiving that final scene? It's also from the book.
It's from the book, yeah. But I think that when I first came to Canada, I was shocked because it was in January, and
Oh,
it's snowing, and it was really. I mean, I didn't have sandals on. I wasn't a refugee, but I remember saying, "Oh my God, this is a strange landscape." And it isn't. I mean, I'd been to Europe before. I'd been to the United States before, but never in the winter. And to land in Canada and start freezing was something I'll never forget. And also the snowstorm was something else. And it was like, and when we were shooting this, I just thought, I know what it feels like. Because it's not just not having inappropriate shoes or clothing. It's about this is this going to be my home now? It's so unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And what is home, Joe? I mean, I don't know what home is for you, but I mean, what I've realized is home is where you feel safe. But, there's a line, I mean, where for me, my favorite line, and I'll say it at the end, where she says that we're free now, the mother says, but, can we, but will we always be, will we ever, will we ever stop being free of people's preconceptions?
Yeah.
We are free slaves forever. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what many immigrants feel. Yeah, yes, we're free, but we're always beholden to the preconceptions of who we are, and
Yeah.
that takes generations.
Yeah, it's a lovely line there in the film, and very well said by you now here. I want to segue into a couple audience questions before we wrap up to see what everyone else has to say. So if we can cue one of those. Um, what was
Mm.
the most unpredictable thing that happened during filming?
Hmm. There were so many of them. Um, every day was something unpredictable because I think that I think the most unpredictable thing that happened was actually um, little Arush saying that he didn't want to wear lipstick, and it's such an important part of him dressing up as a character dressing up as a bride. He's got his bridal finery and he has red lipstick on, and it was really important that Arush would wear the red. I mean, I just assumed that he would, and he said he refused to wear it. He said absolutely not. What will my friends say when they see me with my lipstick on? So it was so we had to break, and and I had to. We went for a long walk, Arush and myself, and I said, Arush, movies aren't real. They're just trying to be real, but they aren't real, and this is not about you. This is about. I mean, I was trying to, it isn't about a philosophy, but he finally understood that it was just a movie because that's what it is. You know, that's the magic of it.
That could be something you could say that to a fully grown adult actor too. If they had issues. I mean,
I know. I think that that's the wonderful thing about working with kids is that you have to treat them as adults. I mean, the way I would talk to him is this, with the same respect I would talk to an older actor.
yeah.
And why do we think that they won't understand it? You know, I think that kids understand many things more than the more we than older actors do sometimes.
Well, and it seems like in this case, that's what happened.
Yeah,
When you explained it to him that way, as as a as a collaborator, and sort of a mentor, he understood. So
understood, and he went with it, and he quite enjoyed himself after that because he realized that he could wipe it off anytime. It wasn't there forever. I mean, that's the magic, right?
were there uh, were there issues? Did Brandon also, as sort of like a first time film actor, did he? Was there any resistance? I know you mentioned a little bit about the singing the police song, but it must be intimidating for him to be in front of the lens for the first time.
I don't think so because I think he's a very confident young man, and I think theater uh, is different than cinema, of course. And but there's he's a method actor completely, so he got into character, and once he was in character, it didn't matter if it was an audience or it was a camera. He just was the character, and that's what he focused on. A
Yeah,
complete method actor.
yeah. I did want to mention too. Did Sting have to sign off uh, on the song being in there?
Uh, uh, I believe the reason we got it. I mean, I have to say, salam to Trudy Styler,
Of course, she's great.
and I mean, she's amazing, and and she's been a real supporter. So when the time came for when I thought, my God, I have to use this song, and So I wrote to Trudy and I emailed her and I said, Trudy, would you please ask your husband? And so thank God she didn't laugh at us. And she said she would. And so we ended up by using the version that Sting has said, not sung, not the one that the police had, because the rights to that are like, I don't know, I think it's the budget of the whole film.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, for peanuts, we got to use it. And I know Trudy and Sting have seen the film. And I didn't hear from Sting, but I heard that Trudy loved it. Yeah.
I'm sure. Let's do one last question from Pierre. A beautiful movie and a moving story, he says. The last line is devastating. You just sort of mentioned this. Here we are all free slaves. But if you can elaborate a little bit more, I think that obviously the audience wants to know more about that line.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I mean, thank you, Pierre. I have to take credit for this because it's not in the book. I think it has a lot to do with my own experience as an immigrant, and as a colored immigrant, you come to a country where you come from, a place that's been devastated, and as from a race that's been decimated, in fact, also, and you come to a quote unquote white country. And yes, you are free, whether it's Canada or America or England, and where there hasn't been a sectarian war. But you'll never be free of preconceptions that the general public will have about you, and that's what the mother Amma says at the end, and that yes, we're free, but we'll be slaves to people's preconceptions of who we are, what we are. Do we talk funny? Is it an assumption that we don't understand a word of English, or there's certain ways that immigrants are supposed to be. We're supposed to be servile as you come here, and so grateful. And I just wanted to wreck that preconception. So for me, it's the most important line in the film, and also the saddest. Like I said, it's not that it can, those preconceptions can be gotten rid of, but it does take generations.
Yeah. Before we end, we do want to also mention another champion of the movie, which is Ava DuVernay. Her distribution or her production company, Array.
Yeah, Array. Yes.
Distributed the film, and also it's available on Netflix for everybody to watch as well. But maybe just say a word or two about Ava.
I mean, I don't think anybody needs to know more about Ava than is already known. We all think she's I think she's amazing. I think what she's doing for filmmakers of color, for women, is fabulous. And her company has been nothing except, I mean, they picked it up right away, and they're the ones who sold it to Netflix through Array. And
Yeah.
it was a real, she was always there for the film, as was, her president, Delane, and everybody. It's such a tight-knit group of women, and I felt that the film was in wonderful hands. So Ava is what everybody knows about her. She is kind, and she is formidable, and she's strong, and she's a humanitarian.
And in addition to being a remarkable artist, she's also a former publicist, which means that she knows, she can spot, great work. I've always thought that about her, is that she's got a real great eye, like an uncanny nature in terms of knowing what works,
Mm-hmm.
and knows how to sell stuff that works too. So that's also great.
No,
Well, so this is great that it's on Netflix for everybody to go watch. I'm sure, I hope many millions of people are able to see it that way. But how's the rest of, you did all the post production after the breakout of COVID. What's in your future now, creatively?
I don't know. I mean, it's slightly depressing in Canada these days because I don't, unlike you guys, we aren't getting our vaccine till much later.
Hmm.
So I think that's what's happening. I mean, it's a very uncertain time, and yes, there are a few scripts that I'm looking at, and a couple of, as two films that are very interesting. One of them is a horror film, which I really love the idea of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a psychological horror, sort of, and I like that. And then there's another one which is the political one, set in India, called The Far Fields, and I'm I'm excited about that too. So let's see. But the vaccine first,
I
safety.
know. I know. Let's get to a pretty high percentage and get back to life, get back to normal. Back to
Absolutely.
travel.
Yeah, I mean, to make films is, especially if you don't have, when you have small budgets, and the Canadian government's been amazing with this film, but it's tough to make films, and I think that be compromised further by smaller crews, and people being so aware of wearing masks, and rightfully so. I mean, it's a whole added unnatural um, aspect, which is we don't need. So I rather just wait till we feel free to experiment while we work, which is so exciting.
Yeah, and perhaps that'll be the what we can look forward to is this great unleashing of creative talent that's been so bottled up um, over the last year. So
Well, that's
um,
sweet of you, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean,
I
I just want people to see the movie because I think Louis Buñuel said something that stays with me, has become my mantra, which is that when you're particular is the very minute you become universal. And I think that Funny Boy is very particular, but it's also very universal.
think that's to me the great quality about all of your films is that uh, you make films sort of about small things that are so much bigger than just the small family or the small story that you're telling, and through those small stories we see the entire world. So and here again, another one where I think that's very true of Funny Boy. So
We'll all thank Louis Buñuel.
yes. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
No, my pleasure.
About
Thank
the
you so
film.
much, Joe. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the thoughtful talk. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you.
Bye bye.
And thank you everybody else for joining us today. It was great to have you. Be sure to take advantage of a free trial to Wrap Pro and be the first to know about upcoming Wrap screenings and events. Also register for upcoming screenings, catch up on any screenings you may have missed, and more by visiting TheWrap.com screenings tabs in the main Wrap page.
I
Bye.
do all of that, Joe. Okay. Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Kat. Kat for rap. I'll never forget that. Okay.